In this box, I've Boston Blue. Not some rare, unusual cheese, but a cock. He's come from Boston, hence the name Boston Blue, and he's had rather a checkered history because he had one good girlfriend and he had lived with two other cocks as well. His girlfriend died and then he started fighting with his brother. So he had to be separated, and now I've had the good fortune to get him, and he's come over 100 miles to be here. But I'm going to introduce him to my girls and hopefully he'll be very happy and make them very happy. And he is quite a docile, friendly cock. Cocks can be quite nasty, but he's used to being handled. Oh, you're nicer than they said. The photographs didn't do you justice. Pop in there, there's a good love. We've got some grain there. You're not going to be there for long. I've kept chickens for well over 30 years here, and I just love them. They're really easy to look after, and there's something very soothing about chickens. But I also think that chickens are in my blood. My father started off after the war, came out of the Air Force and started a small chicken farm. And eventually he ended up with hundreds of thousands of the birds. So I've been brought up with chickens. And then when he sold the business, he actually made more money by selling the chicken poo. So maybe that's why I love chickens, I don't know. But I have to say, although my father did the intensive poultry, I so much prefer seeing the birds out and about. And because I like to be self-sufficient, we have our own cows, pigs, sheep. Chickens are just a natural, easy one to have. And they're fun to come and see, and they're always pleased to see you. I've got chickens here that lay brown eggs, that lay white eggs and blue eggs. And apparently you can tell what colour eggs they lay by looking at the colour of their earlobes. I don't think it's 100% accurate, but I think it's a pretty good indication. I just like having a mixture of eggs. So when you give a bunch of eggs away or a box of eggs away, they've got 3 nicely coloured eggs. And I seem to get a lot of double yolkers from this batch. I don't know why it is, but it's lovely to have a big double yolker. I think that's really nice to come down to breakfast for a double yolk fried egg. In the UK, you cannot feed chickens any kitchen scraps, and that is because of cross-contamination. If you're from a vegan household, then it's fine to feed them household scraps. The other thing you can't feed them because of cross-contamination is dried mealworm. We give ours a lot of corn and maize, but really, if you want your chickens to produce a lot of eggs, you give them a very high protein balanced diet. And a chicken pellet is made exactly for that, or layers mash. So that gives them the right balance, because making an egg does take quite a lot of protein and energy. So ideally you feed them that with a bit of corn for treats. But they do love scraps from the vegetable patch. They like the greens, they love cabbages, dandelion leaves, whatever I've got from weeds, I'll often go and chuck in here. You're not meant to give them too many lettuces because apparently it can give them diarrhea. I'll also chuck in old grass clippings and things, because the more greenery you shove on the soil, the more worms and bugs you get. You should feed chickens grit, and that's because they don't have teeth, but they actually use, the grit is used to break down the food, so it is most important. Now, because mine are free range and they're going everywhere and there's lots of stones in the ground, I haven't ever actually given them grit. The other thing about chickens is I always like them to go to bed with a full crop. So I'll feed them first thing in the morning, then they're let out late afternoon to go around through the ground and pick up beetles and bugs from all over the world. And then I like to give them a bit of corn before they go to bed, because it makes them happy and they seem to like that. And then they digest it through the night. The hen house I really like. I positioned it at the end of one of the paths in the meadows, and it's made from timber shingles on the roof. It's up off the ground for a very good reason, so it keeps them off the damp, and also it's sort of slightly helpful for stopping rats getting in. It's got the egg laying boxes on each side, so there's 6 little cubicles where they can go and lay their eggs. I've got big back doors so I can open them out to clean it out. I don't do that every so often. I probably add more bedding every month or two, and then every so often I pull the whole lot out and put it on the compost heap. And chicken manure is magnificent for the garden because it's high in nitrate and it helps the compost all to break down with a bit of water. It is strong. If you put chicken muck straight onto lawn, it would definitely scorch it. You'll have a bright orange scorch mark because it's so high in nitrogen, I think it is. But it is magnificent manure once it's rotted down a bit and isn't quite so hot. So the setup I've got for my chickens here is quite a good one. I've got electric fence running along the top and the bottom 3 or 4 wires because we have foxes. Everywhere you have chickens, you will have a fox in the UK pretty much. But I do let them out every afternoon so they can go out and have more greenery because it doesn't take long for chickens to really scratch up an area like this. So it's total bare earth and there's very little greenery. They come back here in the evening, hang around here, and then they usually pop to bed at dusk. And that means they're pretty safe from the fox. But most chicken peepers have lost the odd chicken to a fox now and then. So it is a big, big threat. When you get young chickens, you often buy them on point of lay. And they're usually a fair few weeks old and they will suddenly start laying. And from 5 chickens, we get 4 or 5 eggs most days during the long days. So really they often start to lay around February, March, and they'll go right on through, and laying slows up in the darker months. And it's fascinating if you actually watch them lay an egg, because it really is a very fast process. They sit there for some time and then when it comes out, it does shoot out at speed. I'm amazed they don't break, but they are very well designed eggs and they're pretty tough. They will go on laying for about 4 years, but a chicken will often go on living. They've been known to live up to 16 years. And to be honest, you get quite fond of them. They don't take much to look after, so we tend to just keep them on until the end of life. They do go broody. Most chickens will go broody, whether they're with a cockerel or not. So there'll come a time when they'll start and they'll just, hello darling, they'll just sit on their eggs and they won't move. Now obviously, if you haven't got a cockerel there, they will just stay sitting on those eggs waiting for them to hatch for months on end, which is not great for the chicken because it will probably starve and get very unhealthy and unfit. So you want to, I actually go in and I take the eggs from the chick, and I usually wear a glove at that point because they get quite cross, they're defensive. But really nothing's going to happen if it's not fertilised. Now obviously if you have got a cockerel and they're sitting on the eggs, then that's fine. If you want chicks, then just let them sit there. And they usually take around about 21 days before they hatch. Now, when a cockerel mates with a chicken, it doesn't actually insert himself into the chicken. It just sprays around the hole. So there's quite a lot of fluffing of feathers and quacking, but actually not a lot is going on compared to humans anyway. But that's how it happens, and they seem to like doing it fairly regularly. We've had chicks before, and bantams are especially good if you want chicks. And then they're very self-sufficient. If they come out and it's spring, it's quite warm, they'll cozy under the chicken who will flap up her feathers. There really is a reason for the phrase mother hen, because you see them sort of taking the chickens around, pushing them in this direction, finding them food, making chick, chick, chick noise when they've got a nice bit of food for the chicken. And they all follow in a little line. It's really sweet. And you get amazing colours when you have different breeds of chickens. So it's the most exciting time. When we've hatched them in winter, we have brought them somewhere with an infrared light just to help. But actually, chickens are incredibly cold tolerant. They survive sort of minus 20 degrees. Occasionally, you do see cockerels at minus 20 and they get frostbite on their combs. But it's the wet they really don't like, and really bright sun. They are a woodland bird, so this sort of climate is ideal for them. Mites are one of the biggest problems with chickens, and red mite is probably the most common. You can treat that in several ways. I suppose probably one of the easiest and the most natural is just by putting a tiny bit of cider vinegar, raw cider vinegar, in their water every day. And apparently that does help keep mites, lice and worms down. Now, mites come when it starts to get warm, so it's really from May to September. You want to be really vigilant and just check that you haven't got them. If you're not sure, put a bit of white tissue or something near where they roost, and you can actually see little bits of black or red on the tissue because it stands out. They are tiny, but it is an indication that they're there. There are lots of different chemicals that can help kill red mite, and one of the brands that's well known is Poultry Shield. I don't like using chemicals, so I prefer to use diatomaceous earth, and this is a powder, and you just rub it into their feathers, and then you can also spread it around the pen, and that is meant to help keep them at bay at least. It's very difficult apparently to totally eradicate them. When you keep anything at a low stocking rate, such as we've got here, if you can do, then you'll find that disease, problems with henpecking, fighting are all minimalised because they're a much more contented animal. Boston Blue is in his separate little pen, and so he's familiarised himself with the chickens and they've had a damn good look at him. But there's a couple of things that you have to do before you introduce a bird. He's been dusted off with the diatomaceous earth just to make sure he doesn't bring any red mites in to affect my girls. And then I'm also going to clip his wings, or one wing. And that's because I don't want him flying out of the pen during the day, only when I want them to go out. We have the primary feathers there. Painless. A little flick off there. Well done. When you introduce them, it's a good thing to put them in the shed at night because they're all calmed down and they can just get to know each other a little bit, and then they'll bounce out of the shed in the morning and then they can really get to know each other.
And the next day, that's exactly what happened.